Temperature's over.
The temperature seems to be okay, so we're ready to go, right? All right, good evening. Welcome on this snowy Monday to the Township of Bedminster. This is our regular meeting of December 2nd, 2019, our second to last regular meeting for the month and for the year. I recognize that we have a full attendance by Township Committee tonight. Ms. Sullivan, may we please have the Open Public Meetings Act statement?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, adequate notice of this meeting of the Township Committee was sent to the Courier News in Somerville and to the Burnsville News in Whippany, also to all subscribers, and then posted here at the Municipal Building as of January 7th, 2019.
Great, thank you. Please join me in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes. There are 2 minutes. The November 18, 2019 regular Township Committee meeting minutes and the November 18, 2019 closed session meeting minutes. Everyone had a chance to go through the minutes, and if you have comments that you've not otherwise provided to Ms. Sullivan, please express them now. If not, may we have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Permits and raffles, we have none. Time for public comments twice each night. That lectern and microphone is available for the public comment. Seeing none, we will move on. Monthly report discussions by subcommittee chair. We will start with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Only real comment, or update, I should say, is the historic preservation meeting. I went to that 2 Thursdays ago. Garden variety applications, everything was sort of nothing really to report back on. And then at the end, there was a discussion about following the edict, Mayor, of becoming involved and getting involved with the community. And there was a discussion about rolling out the presentation that the Historic Preservation had made to the existing 4th graders last year. Or excuse me, the 5th graders this year, last year as 4th graders. Doing that again this year to the 4th grade class, and then sort of not just at Bedminster Township School, but also at Purnell and also at Willow School and any other area school. But to sort of get into the school and sort of teach the history of the area and what we do in historic pres, and she goes to Vanderveer House and a little, a little snapshot of the Revolutionary War history that we have here in town, and just really trying to infiltrate, if you will, the schools and trying to get into the core curriculum. And the issues, if you get into it, at the older levels, the curriculums are so locked down into what they can and can't teach. There's not a lot of room for electives, so they're trying to do this at the 4th grade level where there's opportunity to do that. But Wendy Weinstein has been a lead on that and been tremendous with Sean Blinn, and I think the two of them do a great job moving forward and getting that into the schools and getting the kids involved. So it'd be exciting times for that board.
Great. And the board is fully aware that we're getting the 1749 charter?
Yes, talked about that. They had heard about that. Everybody's pleased about that. We mentioned we're looking for a place to put it, but it has yet to be determined. But, again, it was sort of following, in your comments were actually echoed at the meeting about getting involved and trying to be active in our boards and trying to reach out and touch the community as opposed to just being reactive to things. So kudos to you for delivering the message. It's been loud and heard, and at least the Historic Pres is doing a great job trying to bring that to fruition.
That's great. John, on the charter, so we now have a timeline for receipt, which is coming up.
Tomorrow.
All right. It's pretty exciting. So we're getting both the charter and the cabinet at the same time?
And the charter, I believe, is a hermetic, however you pronounce that word,
Hermetically sealed.
sealed unit, so it can be moved from one location to the next. So we need to determine where we're going to place it for security purposes, for a period of time. And then we need to determine if that cabinet is going to be sufficient, if we're going to do something else other than that cabinet.
Okay, so Doug, I'm not sure when you have the next HPC meeting, but it might be good to try to think of how to do it, because certainly you don't want to do it during off hours just to have that historic document lying around. But maybe you and Judy and John can coordinate, so maybe you can bring it out,
Yeah,
show it to them, and
definitely.
put it back where it goes for safekeeping.
So that
until
cabinet,
decision is made.
the cabinet measures about 108 inches, which is just shy of 9 feet.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow.
with the pediment that's on the top, so it's rather large. So we need to really think about what we're going to do and how we're going to do, where we're going to put that. It may not live in that cabinet. It
What
may
about in this
Right, right.
find something else. So
What about like right in front of the dais here?
just put a hole in it. So
Oh, yeah. About 6 feet high. Just a.
So unless the weather has changed, I haven't seen any emails, but it should be here between like 11 and 12 tomorrow.
That's great, it's exciting. Please, if you get a chance, please send photos around when it gets here.
So just, yeah, and just to conclude on the historic pres, I had mentioned the ordinance that we're going to be just introducing later tonight. They're obviously interested in seeing, how that goes. So they got their eye on that. That's
Great.
it. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Hickey?
Mayor, thank you. Good evening, all. Rick just wants to remind folks that the basketball clinics for the kindergartners, the first graders, and the second through fourth graders start this Saturday. And the fourth and eighth grade teams are already starting playing games this week, so it's kind of cool. Basketball is back. And also, Rec has discounted tickets to the Never Forget Tribute Classic at Prudential Center on December 14th. You'll see a college basketball doubleheader, and a portion of the proceeds benefit our armed forces. And this info is up on the website. Board of Health, we met on November 21st. I know you're all excited about the status of septic applications. We approved one, and there's also a resolution passed that we'll discuss under new business. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Ms. Santucci.
Thank you, Mayor. The only update, we did meet this past week on several HR matters, but that would be for exec, so nothing further for.
Great. Ms. Moreski?
Thank you, Mary. The only thing I have is we met at JVH on the 20th. They were doing final preparations for last weekend's tree lighting and candlelight tour. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend. This weekend is the Colonial Christmas, which I will be there at least on Sunday. So it's final preparations for all that. There's going to be a lot going on. So again, I invite everybody to participate.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
I will comment that I was at the tree lighting on Friday, and it was well-attended, terrific crowd. A lot of folks from JVH, from town, a lot of young families were there, a lot of folks who had never been to JVH, so once again, this was the first opportunity to get there. And once again, the JVH crew did a great job. Craig and Robin, terrific job with bringing out the enactors and doing the tree lighting. And inside for the candlelight tour, they had period bar keeps, and they were making period drinks of cider, something called...
Mead?
No, they didn't have mead. It was, they had a cider, but they said the cider would not have been common because cider would only have a short life.
Shelf life.
Right, so that with refrigeration you can have cider longer. So the cider they had was a spiked cider, and then something called some black tea punch, and then some lemony punchy thing, but it was all historic and it was very well done. And
It all got foggy after a couple of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I believe you used to use a lot of rum.
Yes, yeah. So it was just a very nice event for the tree lighting, and everyone certainly looking forward to Colonial Christmas, and as JVH moves forward with a bunch of other activities for this month, so very good to see. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago, Judy and I and Mr. Bellardo were all down at the League of Municipalities, along with some folks from our court. Joe Haggerty was there. Tom Skillman was there. Scott Hanna from PPAC Lads was there. So we had a pretty good attendance from Bedminster there. And just a couple things. We usually talk about seminars we've attended. Affordable housing seminar, so it was an interesting program. It so well attended that John popped his head in, looked around, couldn't get a seat, had to go to another seminar.
I did, but
So-
I came back toward the end again.
just to get the credits. But it is remarkable that every year, the Affordable Housing Seminar is standing room only. And when I say standing room only, like along all 3 walls, folks were just lined up looking to hear any insight that the panel might be able to provide as we come to 2025 and start the next round of affordable housing. And the theme of the seminar was what's next? What's coming down the road in 2025? And the consensus was, we don't know. But for us, where the folks on the panel don't know, well, we're going to get there first, because we're going to be dealing with the issue of units that have come off restriction, and will those units continue to count against affordable housing obligations, whatever those obligations may be in the coming years. Talking to some of the panelists after the program, there was no consensus. Some panelists were saying, oh no, well, you created those units, therefore those units stay with you even after the restriction ends. There was another panelist that said, I don't know that would take such a view, that those restrictions no longer exist should they really count towards your affordable housing obligation in 2026, in 2027. John, I'm not sure if you have any further insight into that, but
None that I would care to share in
yeah,
public.
so it's an issue that we will continue to be dealing with as a township for the years to come. Path to Progress. This is I think a lot of you have heard both Steve and I talk about this in the past. This is the bipartisan package of legislation proposed by Senator Sweeney and Senator Oroho. So you've got a very senior Democrat and a very senior Republican putting together some tax-saving initiatives on pensions and benefits, and some other consolidation efforts. And what was interesting is that the seminar was run by Mark Pfeiffer. And Mark, if you're listening, hello. So Mark is a professor at Blaustein School, and he teaches in the local government section. Mark is I guess he's a lifer in local government assistance, both
He's
down in
been with
Trenton and
DCA,
Rutgers.
He's been with many different departments. He's very well versed in pretty much any topic on the state. So.
And he's also a Jewish neighbor.
He lives in Bedford, yes.
Yeah. So I came up to Mark after the program and said, I would like to bring this program to this room. And I asked him if he'd be interested, and I had a conversation with him this morning, actually. And he mentioned, there's 2 ways he could do it. He could actually do the presentation by himself, or with enough time, he would try to bring in Oroho, who is just up in, I think he's in Sussex or Warren, and perhaps even Sweeney or some other folks from DCA. And not that this requires any endorsement, but just to get the conversation going. I said, what I would like to do in that case is probably reach out to the local municipalities, bring in other folks from the borough councils and township committees or surrounding towns, and perhaps the school board, just to hear the dialogue and where that legislation or that packet of legislation is today. Not everyone is going to agree with everything that's in there. Some folks may disagree vigorously with some of the issues, and others may support it wholeheartedly. But it gets the conversation about tax savings and where the state is going on the economy, and I think any discussion on those issues is a good discussion. So please stay tuned, and we'll see where we go. But my idea is to do this for the latter half of January. And probably not a township committee meeting, but my anticipation is that we would schedule this as a separate meeting. There'd be no township action taking, so I don't even know that we would turn to John and Judy if we would even have to notice it.
Now, there's something, if you read Fawne's treatise on governmental law.
I probably will not be reading that. But.
Well, if you had. Gatherings of even a quorum of municipal officials where there's no intention to enact township official business are not subject to the Open Public Meetings Act.
Okay, so great. So then what I would like to do is we'll invite all the neighboring towns and school boards, and, you know, let's have it right here, and we'll work on doing this for the second half of January.
Can the public attend as well?
To the extent that we have room available, I think we can do that, certainly. But I think we'd like to first to reserve the rooms for the elected officials, and maybe, you know, maybe half these seats, if we can get that many people, and then open this for the public.
Would you have like maybe a panel format, or?
It would depend on who Mark is able to bring. So he might, if he can bring the two senators, that would be terrific. But of course, we need to come up from South Jersey and Rojo from North Jersey. You know, I'm not sure that that'll happen. So if it's just Mark by himself, we'll put him up here. If we do get the senators, put them up here together, and that would be the
Session,
panel. Right.
like date wise.
And, you know, otherwise, the programs on Oprah, John, I'm not sure if you want to talk about any Oprah updates, and not particularly compelling.
The thing about Oprah, and I did go to one that the Institute of Local Government Attorneys gave, was that their conclusion was there really was nothing new and of significance this past year in terms of courts rendering at least published decisions on Oprah. So at least in terms of court decisions, everything remains pretty much status quo.
Okay, good. So if anyone wants details, I've got the materials over here. And that's it for, what I would say, is subcommittee reports. Ms. Sullivan, may we please have the administrator's report?
Yes, sir. Make sure I give you the correct one. So the Rattlesnake Bridge Road Bridge Repair Project, we're going to be meeting this Thursday, the 5th, 9 a.m. here at the Township with NJDOT. We did meet a few weeks back with different people from town, EMS, Fiddler's Elbow, professionals here, department heads of the township, to discuss the contractor's proposal to move up the schedule of the project. I think we're in pretty much agreement with that, but the question remained about potential temporary U-turn on 78 that the EMS groups were asking for. So DOT's agreed to come and meet with us on Thursday, and so that'll be 9 o'clock, with everyone.
And we received an email today. There had been a question about what was identified during that initial meeting as a PG&G gas line
Correct.
hung under the Rattlesnake Bridge Road overpass. And we heard from PSE&G that even if there is such a pipe there, it is not active, that there is no gas service within miles, and they reconfirmed that and sent that in an email to us today.
It's there, it's just,
It's just a
Go
pipe.
anywhere.
It's just a pipe, right?
We also received word last Wednesday that Bedminster is receiving another municipal aid program grant from NJDOT for Black River Road in the amount of $300,000. So that could be a project this year, could be a project next year. It's up for discussion, but we just got that notification on Wednesday. So it'll be part of the 2020-2021 paving cycle. Lastly, we normally have an end of the year bill list that we just do a morning meeting like 8:30 to just talk about the bill list, approve the bill list. It's currently scheduled for Thursday, December 26th. I don't know if that's good for everybody. The CFO asked me today, did we want to change to maybe the Friday the 27th? Having it the last week, like the 30th or the 31st, wouldn't allow the finance department to pay all the bills, so.
I'm traveling between the 24th and 26th, so I have court the 27th, so I'm flying on the 27th.
So it's a tough week, but we need a bill list in there.
What's your, what time do you,
On the 27th?
yeah,
9.
could we do it in the afternoon?
Sure.
I can do the 27th.
That's a Friday?
Yeah.
Friday.
Should be all right.
Friday the
Are
27th.
you guys
Should
away?
be okay.
Okay.
If I could have at least a person or two in the room, we could do some by phone, if needed?
I mean, if we do it late enough in the afternoon,
Okay.
Right, okay, so the 27th, what,
It's gonna depend how many cases there are. Sometimes they get out at 2, sometimes they get out at 3. So the later the better.
Is that in Morristown or is that in
It is in Booton,
Boone?
St. Clair's.
So about 35 minutes from here?
Yeah, so like 3:15, like probably 3:30. I don't know if that's,
3:30 meeting? I mean, it's just to adopt the bill list, so.
or I could do it by phone.
Right now, it's just to adopt the bill list, but depending upon some other action, there may be, there may be a reso, there may be,
Yeah, whatever we have to
There may
do
be
with at
something
the end
else.
of the year.
so I'd prefer to keep that, that we have folks in
3:15,
attendance.
you know, I'm just thinking, it could be, I mean, I'll know more, do we have to notice the time like right now, right?
I need to notice it, I don't need to do it tomorrow, but I will need to do it.
Just will make it 4:30? 4?
That's better. Yeah, 4 o'clock,
Yeah, whatever works for you.
4 is good.
Works.
4 o'clock, sold.
Okay, very good, that's all I have.
And there's something I do want to follow up on the, that same email from PSE&G indicating that there was no active gas service under Rattlesnake Bridge Road, under the overpass. They did talk that since there is gas service that comes down Ski Hill by about 800 feet, that PSE&G, the more folks on Ski Hill that are interested and want to tap into gas service, that would greatly impact the fees that PSE&G may charge to bring service all the way through. So perhaps
Should we be noticing folks up on Ski Hill to see
I
if
think
they're
we need
interested?
to have another discussion with Michael Coyle.
What
Yeah,
about-
but that's something they roll out, I mean, to their customers, or they
It
don't
was,
have any customers.
it was interesting. It really made it sound like, hey, we could do it. You, meaning us, we would have to let PSE&G know.
Well,
be
you talk
interesting.
about potentially how many customers there could be added, what a potential cost might be, we could, depending on.
Yeah, no, at what point, how
spending, yes, the cost would be.
And when you hit the critical number, they would just say, hey, this is great, we're going to add 40 residents, no charge to bring the line down. So I think that's a discussion we need to have with PSE&G.
So more to come.
Yeah. All right, and I think hopefully,
Yeah.
if you want to take lead on talking
Absolutely.
to those folks, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely, thank you.
Okay. A discussion on introduced ordinances. We have none. Introduction of ordinances. We do have an ordinance to introduce, which is ordinance 2019-013, an ordinance creating section 3-18 entitled Property Maintenance VN Village Neighborhood Zone, to be added to the revised general ordinance of the Township of Bedminster. This ordinance creates regulations for property or buildings characterized by deteriorating or abandoned buildings or land which exhibit a lack of continued maintenance and upkeep, including land or building with debris, litter, deteriorating paint or siding, accumulation of trash or junk, or any of which may tend to depress the aesthetic value of a neighborhood. If this if the ordinance is introduced, the public hearing will be scheduled for December 16, 2019 at 7:00 p.m. in these chambers. So I will ask if someone wants to make a motion to introduce the ordinance.
I'll move to introduce.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so just as a, in prep for the public hearing, Doug and John, if you just want to give us a brief summary of the proposed ordinance?
Sure. You want to do it, John? Go ahead.
Sure. As many of you are aware, the committee is concerned about certain deteriorating and blighting buildings that are in the historic village neighborhood zone, also commonly known as Pluckerman. This is a tightly crafted property maintenance ordinance that only applies to that particular zone. no other zones in town, commercial or residential, and it will give the township the ability in certain dramatic cases where serious deterioration that has impacted certain buildings that is completely not in keeping with the standards of the Pluckerman Village is apparent for the zoning officer, emphasis zoning officer, as the exclusive enforcing officer to issue summonses in order to give the property owner abundant time and notice to remedy the effect. There is the requisite due process, opportunity to appeal, hearing, everything else to protect the rights of the property owner. So I think this is tightly crafted that it should work rather well.
And
One clarification on the village neighborhood zone, excuse me, does that also encompass Main Street? That would also be a village
Yes.
neighborhood, right?
Just whatever the zone is, it would also encompass Main Street, which would run up to the Pizza Brothers location.
that was my question.
Yep,
So,
yep.
thank you. Okay, so we'll
Thank
have
you,
the
John.
public hearing on
Thank you.
December
Bringing
16th.
that up.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you, Doug and John, for working on that. Public hearing of ordinances. We actually do have one tonight, which is ordinance 2019-012, an ordinance amending section 4-1 entitled Soliciting, Canvassing, and Peddling of Chapter 4 entitled General Licensing of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Bedminster. This ordinance amends the township's regulations and license requirements for the soliciting, canvassing, and peddling in the township. May we have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so for this, I'm going to turn to Ms. Santucci.
Thank you, Mayor. As we discussed last time, we needed to tweak this ordinance a little bit. We worked with the chief, Renee and I worked with the chief, as well as Mr. Bellardo and Mr. Sordillo, to put together an ordinance that would address the need for the chief and for his department to carefully vet the people who apply for permits, to solicit, but we also wanted to protect the public as well. We do not currently have any no-knock language in this ordinance, but as the Township Committee discussed, if we need to tweak it or to add or delete language in the future, we can do that. But this will give the chief and his department the ability and the tools that they need to make sure that the public remains safe and has the protection that he needs to properly vet those people that are applying. So we've gone through the language a lot. I think the chief is looking forward to having this go through. And that's really...
That testimony, just a head nod?
As he said last time, it's been coming for a long time, he said, so we're happy that it's here.
And Chief, you're, from your end, you're comfortable with the revisions that have been made from the
Correct.
prior version?
From the prior version that was out there, yes.
Yeah.
And it'll be able to, vet the people and issue the permits and regulate how long they're gonna have them. And, once and if this is passed, then, the application has to be updated too. We have this old handwritten thing, so we're gonna go fillable, it'll be online. And, we're just waiting to roll it out.
And so when the application does get revised, is that being revised by your office or between you and
It's
Mr.
gonna be,
Bellardo?
obviously with the town attorney, just to make sure that, everything that's required in the application is going to be in a new document, which will be user-friendly.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's, just going to comment on it, I think it's a nice balance from protecting the interests of our constituents and not being too onerous on the police and the other folks with the do not call list. Always have that option available to us to see how this rolls out, but as an interim step to come into compliance with the law and to give our folks some security that we have our hands around who's coming to their doors. I think it's a great job, Stacy and everybody that worked on this. Chief,
And people always have the right to put up a no soliciting that
Right.
warns potential commercial vendors, you're not welcome to knock. So many people do that and will continue to have the right to do that.
Right.
Okay, do we have any questions from the public regarding this ordinance? Okay, seeing none, may we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved?
Second.
Again, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
May we have a motion to adopt ordinance number 2019-12?
I will make that motion.
I will second.
Roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacob?
Aye. And once again, thank you, Stacy, for leading this with the chief, and to attorneys Bellardo and Sardillo for bringing this to the end. So thanks again. And Renee, geez, I'm sorry.
No, but, it was a good balance, because we all look at, when you look at a document, we all see different things in the document, so, I'm taking apart this, and this, and then the chief's, worried about other areas, and then Renee's, so it was a good
And we got the Girl Scouts included, we got the Boy Scouts included, we got
the schools.
fan fruit included.
There you go.
So,
the children who go to school, they're from Bendon, the school might be, so we covered everything. We're
Right.
good.
Good.
We're good.
Consent agenda, we have no items on the consent agenda, and we have no resolutions tonight. So how about that? Approval of bill list, may I have a motion to approve the bill list pending review of individual invoices?
So moved.
I'll second.
Again, roll call vote, Mr. Stevenson?
Aye.
Mr. Hickey?
Aye.
Ms. Santucci?
Aye.
Ms. Moreski?
Aye.
Mayor Jacob?
Aye.
Thank you.
Discussion items, does anyone have something they want to put up for discussion? If not, we'll move to new business. And first is Resolution 2019-114, review of OPMA and OPRA laws.
We talked a little bit about this last time. This was a proposal from the Municipal Clerks Association of New Jersey, who have been working with the Executive Director of the Government Records Council, who happens to be Senator Loretta Weinberg. And the clerks are proposing that the commission put together a group to examine the effects of OPRA on local government, and what their findings might be to perform a comprehensive reform, if needed, of the OPRA laws. They've been in effect for quite some time now. I don't know the exact date.
2002, July.
Oh, see, you know.
It's a long time.
So there haven't been, many changes to date. So the clerks are all asking their towns for a resolution of support for this.
John, at your OPRA seminar, was there any discussion about this request for resolution from the clerks?
No, it was an hour, and it was mainly a presentation concerning the unreported cases, and also how to respond to OPRA requests and maintain records for social media, such as Facebook and Twitter and things like that. So the clerks have been going back and forth with Senator Weinberg for years, feeling that many of her proposals were rather onerous in nature on both OPRA and the Open Public Meetings Act. So whether there is going to be any meaningful OPRA reform, in my opinion, like whether there is going to be any meaningful affordable housing reform or any meaningful reform by anything with this legislature, remains open to debate. But one can always pass a resolution and hope it at least gets some momentum rolling.
And in some of the earlier, in my recollections of Senator Weinberg's legislation, it would subject essentially every board and commission
And
to
subcommittees.
and
advisory
true, and
committees.
subcommittees and advisory committees to OPMA and OPRA, and it could be an expense, and it would not only be just making them subject, but having video available for every such meeting. And that really was my recollection of one of the earlier iterations, and that's why you saw some of the pushback from the municipalities and from the clerks, because this could be an expense, once again, an expense upgrading video and maintaining that video data for a very long time. So it's hardware, it's software expenses, it's employee and personnel expenses. I'm not sure if that is still in the current version of what Senator Weinberg is proposing, but you get a sense that the ramifications of this legislation, it's just pushing further obligations on municipalities. That being said, the current request from the Clerks Association is to go to their municipalities and ask for a letter of support. In the past, in my 7 years on the committee, we've been very selective, good word, of when we move forward on resolutions, whether they're symbolic resolutions or resolutions of support. Judy, I'm not sure if you want to go into any further detail. There's no urgency, my understanding, of when we would consider or make such a decision.
There's no ticking time clock of when this has to be submitted by or anything like that.
Have the
So,
majority of municipalities been supportive?
From what I've seen, there has been a pretty good response from many municipalities that I've seen from local clerks that I'm familiar with. I can't name any off the top of my head here in Somerset County, but the email back and forth has been, from the president of the Municipal Clerks Association that, keep them coming in, we're collecting, because they ask for a copy to be sent in. So it looks as though it's been positive, but we're still trying to get as much participation by the towns as well.
and is the intent that this would request a commission to look at Senator Weinberg's legislation or her legislative reforms that she's proposing?
The resolution that was written, the sample that was given and what we have before you, it doesn't really make any specific suggestions. They're just asking for a commission to be formed, made up of professionals within, from municipalities and legal profession, and that deal with this on a regular basis and have them look at it, because they're the ones dealing with it on a daily.
And from my point, there's always a little concern when you're asking for a commission to be formed. You don't know who's going to populate that commission and whether they're necessarily going to express the views that the clerks and the municipalities are requesting that they want to hear.
There would be representation from the Municipal Clerks Association on this commission as well.
Just to turn up the contrast, what's being considered it's an unfunded mandate. It's a broken process, and now there are going to be more onerous obligations on each
Those
municipality.
are some of the proposals coming from
Right.
Senator Weinberg.
Yes. No, yeah, there's no funding coming from the state.
Right,
When they
right.
say, so if the state is saying, Doug, you have to have a video of the Historic Preservation Commission, and you need to keep and maintain that video for as long as Oprah and OPMA requires, and if there's any memos or any other dialogue going back, even though it's an advisory commission, that they would still be subject to Oprah and OPMA. And that comes at some level of maintenance of records.
Well, for
You're
that,
not getting money from Trenton under this current legislation is not giving the municipalities funding to implement those requirements. As Colin said, it's another unfunded mandate coming from Trenton if that legislation goes through.
So that I think they had pulled it, right, before the time being?
Yeah.
So,
But Senator Weinberg's been talking about this for several years now, so this is something that is certainly near and dear to her, and it's not going away. So,
And the current process is broken as it is, as Judy showed with the numbers of requests that you're getting, the amount of time you're taking to process it. So, it becomes a burden on the township and the taxpayers.
Well, how many times have we seen a subcommittee broken down on fill-in-the-blank topic? And you're having meetings off-site, you're having meetings at someone's house, you're having meetings at a restaurant, you're having meetings, that's all gone. If this goes through, the ability to govern, the ability to break off and be able to be nimble at a subcommittee level to come back and report to a full committee will bring governing to its knees. Every time you need to have a subcommittee meeting, I got to be in a room with a video? I mean, you're kidding me? That's ridiculous.
and have it
That's
be
absolutely
noticed-
ridiculous.
Have it be noticed
Has
as a
to be
public
noticed,
meeting?
legal notices, yeah, it's a lot of work.
I guess the great hope would be that the Municipal Clerks Association would have representation, the other governmental entities would too as well, and everybody would work together to make sure that, but, as the mayor said, that's tough.
There's no
because-
guarantee of how it will go.
Has the league weighed, in the past, my recollection was that the league had a position paper on this.
I believe they are supporting this resolution as well. I think they're listed too. Yeah, the resolution supports New Jersey League of Municipalities and Municipal Clerks Association of New Jersey recommendations. So the recommendation is from both.
So maybe for the next meeting, you could actually see if you can find those recommendations and then distribute them so that, if we're giving a resolution of support, we know exactly what we're supporting.
Okay, some of that is outlined in the resolution, but I can look into it further.
Right, I just want to see if there's something that the league has that might be a little more current.
Okay.
Okay, next new business is Board of Health resolution, recreational marijuana. Mr. Hickey.
Thank you, Mayor. I figure I'd start with a little background on why this came to be. During the spring, the County Health Department presented on the implications of the state legalizing recreational marijuana, underlined recreational, particularly since at that point, passage of a state bill looked imminent. The county highlighted concerns from a public health and safety perspective, and I wanted to share a couple of fun facts here as kind of a backdrop. There are federal guidelines for pesticide use on marijuana plants because marijuana is a federally banned substance. There are no regulations for marijuana levels in a variety of products, which is important because it's not only being smoked, it's also being used as a food additive in many cases. No one has quantified the public safety costs associated with the anticipated increase in traffic accidents while driving under the influence of marijuana. And by the way, as Chief well knows, there's no device equivalent to a breathalyzer to go do a field sobriety test and understand whether or not somebody's driving under the influence of marijuana. And since we're talking about policing, dispensaries are cash businesses, which is an added risk. The dispensaries cannot open an account with a federally insured bank because those banks are regulated entities, and marijuana is a federally banned substance. There's obviously also an impact to fire safety. You'd have to regulate grow houses because they're potential fire hazards. You have to subject them to inspections on a regular basis. And one data point that really stood out to me, Somerset County is roughly half the size of Denver, Colorado from a population standpoint. The Department of Health in Denver had to hire 20 new people after Denver legalized recreational marijuana. So the county is looking at a significant increase in cost, if in fact that's a good proxy. They'd have to hire, they think, about 10 new folks to the staff. So, and all told, the county estimates that it'll take about 2 years for the rules and regulations, basically the process, to catch up if and when a state bill is passed. So that's a little background for why the Board of Health took some action. So the Board of Health resolution that's in front of you addresses recreational marijuana only. It was prepared by examining the ordinances from many of our neighboring towns, and they had their medical expert weigh in. It was adopted at the November 21st Board of Health meeting and serves as a guidepost for us whether we want to consider something now or in the future. I also want to point out that the Board of Health may take up the issue of medical marijuana at some point in the future and make additional recommendations back to the township, particularly in regards to consumption of medical marijuana in public spaces. They don't want to intercede, obviously, between doctor and patient. It's just what do you do when people are ingesting it in public. So in summary, what you have in front of you, the Board of Health is opposed to legalization of marijuana for recreational use, believes it poses a health risk. In particular, they're concerned with the level of THC in recreational marijuana. So unlike medical marijuana, recreational marijuana is produced to maximize potency. You have THC level, which is typically in the 25% range and can go up to 98% in certain products. And what's seen in studies is you see a significant increase in psychotic episodes and addiction when levels are in excess of 25%. They're also very concerned with the inclusion of high THC levels in edible products. That's baked goods, cookies, brownies, gummies, lollipops, candy, whatever. And the fact of the matter is you can't distinguish between the THC-laced versions of those and the non-THC-laced versions of those. So that's another big concern of theirs. And finally, they highlight the human and public safety implications of traffic accidents, hospitalizations, and other social costs. So as a result, they recommend that any ordinance that we adopt restrict or prohibit the cultivation, use, distribution, and sale of recreational marijuana within the township. Now, obviously, Attorney Bilardo will chime in here. Recreational marijuana is currently illegal in the state, but it will likely show up on a ballot in 2020. Even if it was legalized statewide, we would still have the option of banning the cultivation and sale of recreational marijuana based upon whatever was in the final state law. And John, I don't know if you want to add in, because I know you've been working with some other...
No, I think you've adequately summarized the discussions that we've had on this topic. Recreational marijuana is currently banned both on a federal and state level here in New Jersey, even with respect to medical marijuana in dispensaries. There is a process for submitting applications to the state administrative code regulations. One of the application questions is, have you obtained the consent of the municipality, and or is it a location where it is a permitted use? I have been involved since I have a colleague that was counsel to the Senate majority recently and was involved in the drafting of state legislation concerning cannabis. I've actually been involved recently in applications for a couple of private facilities. So I basically know, even with medical dispensaries, they are not looking to go into towns where they are not welcome. Because part of the process is with the state and the ability to obtain one of the licenses. Is it a town that wants this? So if towns don't want it, typically they will not go there. So you certainly can adopt an ordinance banning recreational marijuana, but it's already banned on the federal and state level.
That is sort of my comment. What are we doing here? Like, looking at an ordinance that also, we don't approve moonshine. Right? So I mean, no one's growing, cultivating, selling, hopefully not ingesting or not smoking recreational marijuana here in town. So is this teeing us up to preventing cultivation of a medical facility? Because I mean, I don't know if I'm there yet. Based on one review of a Rocky Mountain high intensity drug trafficking area report of November of 2017, we're now going to let that be our going forward, plan of attack and how we address this issue. I just don't understand why this is coming at us. I thought that we were sort of talking about down the line, in the future, we should be considering whether a distribution facility, a cultivation facility, or even like an end use, like a point of sale facility, place, is something we want in here or in town, or something we don't want in town. But this, to me, as I read this, is sort of a precursor to, we're closed for business, we're not interested in that business, and maybe that's where we are, but I don't recall ever having that discussion with you folks here on the dais. So I'm a little bit puzzled as to why this is coming out the way it's coming out, and why we're getting it now.
Again, it's only recreational. It's not medical. They're not making any recommendations on medical right now. And again, it's because they're looking at the public safety concerns that they have from a board of health perspective. We don't need to act. We don't need to take action.
We have a federal government. We have a state government. We have these other governments have already said this. Why are we now saying the same thing that's already said? Why are we coming out and saying, yes, we agree that something that's illegal is illegal?
I think the concern long-term is, and it goes back to the point that the county raised, which is, if the legislation is passed, you're suddenly going to be stuck with a situation which you may not be able to control with respect to public safety and health. You may have to think about how you address those issues, because it will take time.
I don't mean to be obtuse. I don't understand what you mean.
Well, as an example, when we talked about, for example, with the chief, right? How do you manage driving under the influence when recreational marijuana is now legalized? He can't do a field sobriety test. He can't.
Is the point of this ordinance to say that if it was passed at the state level, let's just say it was passed at the state level and recreational marijuana use was legal in the state of New Jersey, but in Township of Bedminster it's not?
You could determine if you want to have it sold, if you want to have it distributed, you want to have it cultivated.
I'm just really trying to drill down. Is that what we're saying here with this ordinance? If we were to adopt an ordinance, is that what we would be saying? Is that even though if it was okay, state permitted it, we would say here in our township we're not? Is that?
It would be,
it's an option. You could think about it or not.
I don't know. We wouldn't be protected, correct?
The reason I think there was discussion in Bernard last summer about whether to permit in part or ban entirely medical marijuana marijuana facilities, whether it be cultivation, dispensaries, or sale. And ultimately, by the time they got around to looking at it, the deadline had passed for the submission of applications to the state. Obviously, none had been submitted for Bernards Township. I called to their attention the application form that even for a medical use, it required municipal consent. There was no pending sign that legislation was going to be passed, that there would probably be a referendum. They ultimately decided that given all of those facts together, any lack of consensus, they were not going to move forward with a zoning ordinance at that time. Whether they would do what the League of Municipalities has recommended towns do with respect to zoning for these uses, is wait and see ultimately what the state will do, either by referendum or legislation, because there may be legislation that impacts the ability to adopt certain ordinances banning medical marijuana. So Committeeman Stevenson's point is a good one. Do you want to act an ordinance that bans something that's already been banned by the federal and state government? You can do that. Mr. Hickey's aware I sent him a number of ordinances in various towns around the state that have decided for policy reasons or symbolic reasons they wanted to do that, but it's really a policy decision at this point.
But John, just how does that work? And it could be marijuana, it could be anything. If the state says you may do X, can a local government say, although X is permitted in our state, you're not doing it in our town?
Well, I don't think the ordinance would ban the use of recreational marijuana, because if the state said that you could use recreational marijuana, far be it from a local municipality to ban such a use. Perhaps what the Board of Health is saying, and I'm not aware exactly what they're saying, is we want to ensure that from a zoning perspective, the cultivation, growth, or sale of medical or recreational marijuana is not permitted in Bedminster Township.
Okay.
I believe that's exactly what they're saying.
Yes,
John.
you could not obviously ban, if the state said, look, somebody wants to smoke recreational marijuana, they can do it. You would be superseded in saying, no, you can't do it in our town.
Okay. That was my understanding as well, but as I read this, I don't read the resolution to be setting us up for part two.
I think
and
an
whatever
example
part
of
two
that
is.
would
Well,
be-
if you actually read where the now therefore, so this is the Board of Health says they make their own resolution and the recommendation to the Township Committee to oppose any efforts by the New Jersey legislature to legalize marijuana. So the first 2 pages are all the whereases where they're setting it up, but the real request or the real recommendation from the Board of Health back to us is to oppose those efforts at the legislative end.
Again, I hate to be the champion of this particular issue, but why are we saying, yeah, we agree, it should be illegal? It's already illegal. Why are we, this seems superfluous to me.
Well, that immediate request, if that last sentence, the board recommends and urges mayor and township committee to oppose any effort by the legislature to legalize marijuana for recreational use.
What does that mean? We have to file an attorney to lobby Trenton to stop this from happening? I just don't understand. What does that mean? That we now have to oppose the state government from...
Just as we talked about symbolic resolutions, they would probably, I guess as Board of Health is saying, hey, we want the Township Committee to pass a resolution saying Governor Murphy and to our legislative team of DeMayo, Peterson, and Doherty that we want you to oppose. That's what the Board of Health is asking the Township Committee to do. We don't have to do anything.
Correct.
This is the Board of Health, pass this resolution. Committeeman Hickey is bringing it forward as the liaison from the Board of Health to us, saying this is something the Board of Health came up with. Here it is.
Right.
Have
Purely
at it.
informational, right.
Have at it, don't have at it, for your consideration and discussion.
You
like
can-
technical and
Yeah, I mean...
like fact-checking kind of I read through the whereases, so,
Yeah.
this is.
And then
like-
it says, and enact such ordinances as,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera.
This is, 90% that, 70% this journal, that would be something that before
Yeah.
we would move
There's
forward.
one site, there's one primary source of information in here.
They are citing certain things, they have additional citations, but again, we can choose to do nothing now, we can choose to act later, we can choose to act not at all.
And I'll give you an example. The use of alcohol is absolutely permitted in this state if you are of the age of 21 years or older. A town could not say you cannot drink alcohol in our town, but certain towns have decided from a zoning perspective that they want to be dry towns. So they have enacted ordinances saying no restaurants or other uses selling alcohol. We look to our neighbor Fort Hills. So I imagine if recreational marijuana is ever going to be made legal, and again, pending upon the final legislation enacted, certain towns will have to decide from a zoning perspective, where do we want this, in whole, in part, or not at all, as either cultivators, growers, or dispensers. I think that is going to be the legal issue that's ultimately faced, depending upon whether it does go on a referendum, whether it's passed, and then after the referendum, whether they finally enact legislation.
And
You can have people saying we favor Brexit by way of referendum, and years later, you still have no final resolution. So the fact that people say, yes, we want recreational marijuana, that doesn't necessarily mean that a month later you're going to have a bill.
We don't have a Brexit subcommittee, do we?
No, and let's not form one either.
Well, Gina, for next year, you may on the Brexit subcommittee, and that does involve a trip to London, so, But, look, this is, it's been placed on new business. There's nothing we need to do tonight, and there may not be anything we need to do at the next meeting or the next meeting after that. But obviously, the issue is still germinating down in Trenton, and as Colin indicated, is likely to be on the ballot as a referendum in 2020. And just, no crystal balls, but I'll throw it out there. My guess is if it's put out on a general referendum, my guess is it would pass.
Mm-hmm.
Even recently, if you look at the FDA with respect to cannabis that does not have THC in it, they've looked at some of those products and reached a determination that there may be negative medical impacts upon even using cannabis gummy bears or cannabis oil, for
Oh, you mean the
instance.
CD oil?
Yeah. So, it's an evolving area of law. People haven't quite reached a consensus on whether the use of all of those products, even without THC, is safe.
Right, look, there are people that are swearing by CBD oil for pain and
Tennis
anxiety.
elbow and
Allergies.
Oh, I haven't heard that one.
Allergies. I can.
my
Tell
wife
you
is
that,
using
yeah.
hemp-based conditioner. I'm going to have to ask her. She's getting a buzzer, otherwise feeling odd after
Not
using
in
that.
hemp.
Hope she doesn't watch this show.
Chief, just without numbers in front of you, with the advent of recreational marijuana, are you seeing more arrests or for folks traveling with marijuana or marijuana products?
We come across people that have it on them and have a medical card and are transporting through our state. As for arrests, I mean, we're about the same average.
About the same. So you're not seeing a spike, even though it's recreationally available, medically available, you're not seeing a spike in non-medical usage in stops and arrests.
There's a large percentage of people that don't leave it at home and they don't have medical cards. So, it's around.
It's around, but it's always been around.
Mhm.
So you're not seeing it more around now than you may have 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago when medical marijuana was not a
No.
thing. So you're seeing the same numbers you've always seen.
We're status quo with the
Okay.
numbers. I mean,
It's
There's a lot of people out there
much
that
more
have
potent
marijuana.
these days. than 40 years ago.
Right. It is interesting that obviously there's no federal regulation because federally it's illegal.
Right.
So the feds aren't going to say, hey, this is a standard for edibles, this is a standard for, smokables and everything else, because
It's a legal substance.
it's a
Can't
substance.
do
Right.
research on it.
So,
Right.
Look, and the banking issue is real as well, because both banks go use interstate commerce, so they're federally
yep, so
regulated.
it's a cash business, and they've got to somehow take that cash and eventually get it to a bank that will take it.
Right.
And it's, the states this is an example of where the states are moving independently of the feds, but the feds still obviously control the network, the financial network, the distribution network that runs behind it. So you still have a hell of a lot of confusion out there. And, just the issues, Colin, that you had mentioned, the state itself may get ahead in the effort to legalize without having a structure of enforcement behind it.
And that was the biggest concern the Board of Health had at the end of the day, and the county really hammered that home, which is it will take time, whenever it's enacted, to actually put the process behind it.
Right.
So start thinking, you don't have to do anything, but start thinking about it.
Yeah, and so I can tell you that down at the league, there was about 3 or 4 programs on legalization and the impact of marijuana on localities, and we're going to be dealing with it. My thought is to keep on new business, and just as we do with a lot of other activities, just keep our fingers on the pulse of what's developing, both down in Trenton and technologies. Chief, I'm not sure if there's any burgeoning technology on what intoxication is, or what is an appropriate or inappropriate level of intoxication for using a vehicle.
The registers, I don't think they have like the alcohol test where it gives you a number. I don't know how it's gonna play out.
But from our perspective, I'm aware of those issues. I'm less concerned about that. I'm more concerned about what does it mean for us as a municipality? What does it mean from us from a land use perspective? Are these cultivation centers something we want, something we don't want? Is a point of sale shop something we want in town, or something we don't want in town? I don't know whether this gets us there, because it's addressing recreational use, which currently not.
This resolution, this is just a resolution, once again, that the Board of Health adopted.
But
This resolution is not, we are not considering any resolution. To me, this is just a topic that the Board of Health identified and proposed to us.
I would be more interested in seeing what the Board of Health's position is with respect to medical, because that's currently in play. That's currently a possibility of someone saying, knock, knock, I'd like to set up shop in your town with a medical center. I'd like to see an update from the Board of Health and what they think about that, as opposed to recreation, which is not in play. That whole thing.
And
As we started tackling the issue of marijuana, let's start with what's publicly currently available, and what's our view. And I say this rhetorically, I'm not looking for a response. What is our view as a DAIS, as a group, as a leading the township? Do we want these types of establishments in our township, whether it's cultivating, distributing?
That may not be a Board of Health issue. That may be more of a land use board issue, as Colin indicated, that the Board of Health made a recommendation that there not be recreational marijuana being consumed or smoked in public spaces. That's about as close as the Board of Health got to that issue.
Correct.
The dispensary and point of sales associated with medical marijuana and locating that within the town, I would say is probably not within the purview of the Board of Health, but probably with the land use board.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
once again, my idea is keep the marijuana issue on new business. So once again, that we're not letting it go, we're not letting it lapse, and we continue to monitor it. And that's probably something that all 5 of us, and our attorney, and our staff, and our chief will continue to discuss.
Good. Some watchful waiting.
All right. Which brings us to old business. Short-term rentals. Ms. Sullivan, do we have any updates?
No, sir, not at this time.
There was the short-term rental complaint that came in, but Mr. Velardo, I presume that you prefer to have that discussion in executive session since it may be...
I think so, Mayor.
Okay, so let's put that off for exec. Engine braking, see the sign is up by Gina, by your house.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, John.
Any observations?
Sign is up. And blinking.
Is it quieter?
It's brighter.
It's brighter.
No, I mean, honestly, I was saying last time, I haven't yet noticed any engine braking. But now that the leaves are down and stuff, that sound would travel further, I haven't heard it. So I can only assume it's a good thing, that it's preventing it. I mean, that's the starting point for the southbound trucks, sort of drifting down into a quick check, and that light at Lamington, so that's the appropriate spot where you'd otherwise hear it. So, it's not happening. It's a good thing.
Gina, any observations?
I've been paying attention, I haven't heard any engine braking.
Oh, that's good. So, hey, whether it's cause and effect or not,
Okay.
No doubt.
Pluckman Park.
So, John had pinged me earlier.
No, this is the senior facility. Oh, okay.
That
other Pluckman Park.
that the pathway out of it to Knox Park has been cleaned up. So I think work on our side of the ledger is checked off. We do need to see that the current homeowner or property owner there, sees that through. But as far as I know, all of our boxes have been checked.
Judy, any more inquiry from potential purchasers about the property and the
I have
payment in
not.
lieu of tax financial agreement?
So we had this was months ago, a number of inquiries to our construction department regarding pending permits, violations, different matters. All that information was provided to the potential new buyer, and now we haven't heard anything.
Okay, all right. P&L outages.
No update, Mayor.
Okay, I think we all received a bunch of emails today from JCP&L reps, including Carol Bianchi, about we've got wet snow, be prepared. Once again, and if you have trees that are in suspect condition, please let JCP&L know. Public comments, second bite of the apple for the microphone for public comments. Seeing none, let's move to Township Committee comments, and we'll start with Mr. Stevenson.
Thank you, Mayor. My only comment is that, John, I got to tell you, you sort of ruined my plan of having a snow day today. I kept getting myself in the mind that it was a snow day, and I can get into that full snow day mode. But you kept coming through and making my road blacktop. So good job getting the roads cleared as usual.
It wasn't very difficult to do, actually.
Yeah, well, still, you did a good job as usual. That's it.
Mr. Hickey.
Mayor, I have no comments other than to thank John for all his hard work over the weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
No more
that's right.
comment.
I have nothing today, Mayor.
Okay. And John saw you out there, I guess that was Sunday morning? So Sunday morning, Thanksgiving weekend, our Director of Public Works coming down Steeplechase up to the Hillside Avenue intersection, a little wave to John. That was probably about 9 o'clock in the morning or so, and that's how he spends his holiday weekend.
He wanted to get out of the house, I think.
No.
So,
Thank you.
okay, we do have an executive session. We will not be taking action. There'll be no formal action that we will be taking, unless I'm wrong. Am I wrong? Is there a reso?
I thought we had a reso that we had asked Ms. Sullivan to draft and redraft, so we do have that, and we had talked about doing it timing-wise, but it can certainly go on the next as well.
Since it's not noticed, we can't take action on it. Okay, so it's not, so we will not be taking action, for sure, following our return to open session. With that, may we have and sometimes the comments, JVH, Colonial Christmas will be fair participation by the Township Committee. Hope to see a bunch of residents out there as well. So may we please have a motion to go to, or adjourn to executive session?
So, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We'll be back.
Okay, we're back.
Oh,
Okay, we are back. It is 9:59. We are back from executive session. As we indicated earlier, we are not taking any further action. So may we have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
So move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you and good night.
You love that thing. Do it again. Do it again.